My wife betrayed me to chase after her first love, but when I was preparing to divorce, I discovered we had never been legally married. It turned out I was just a pawn in a cruel romantic scheme. I am Ethan Campbell, 32 years old, born and raised in a small town called Ashridge, tucked deep within the forests of Oregon. All my life, I only dreamed of having a small house and a gentle wife, living peacefully together through the years. I met Rachel Davis 3 years ago in a local real estate office where she started as an intern. On her first day, she was assigned to me, the official employee, to learn the ropes. She was like a strange breeze in the quiet work environment. Her eyes were as clear as autumn, her voice as soft as morning dew. I fell in love with her from the very first meeting. Rachel told me she was the only daughter of a single mother who had passed away long ago. She came to Ashridge with empty hands, a dream of making a life, and a fragile heart. Hearing those words, I felt even more pity for her. I worked day and night, selling real estate by day, taking night shifts at the gas station to save every penny. My biggest dream back then was to buy Rachel a house, and one day, have children with her. 3 years later, we got married. I say got married because it wasn't until the day I brought the registration papers to file for divorce that I learned it was just a fake document. The clerk at the town's marriage office said, "Mr. Campbell, your marriage certificate is invalid. You two were never legally husband and wife." At that moment, I wasn't angry. I just stood there quietly for a bit. Everything suddenly became clear. It turned out, from start to finish, the person Rachel truly wanted wasn't me. And strangely enough, I felt relieved. At least I didn't have to deal with the messy divorce procedures anymore. I returned to our small rundown apartment. Rachel was sitting on the sofa, smiling at her phone. Seeing me, she panicked and hid the phone, saying, "You're back?" I didn't respond. Rachel stood up, gently touched the necklace around her neck, and smiled. "I really like this gift. But next time, don't buy something so expensive, okay? I know how hard you work." That necklace was something I had custom ordered a month ago, a birthday gift for her. I had spent half a year's salary on it. It had just arrived today. But looking at Rachel, I only said calmly, "Yeah." My indifference surprised her. Before, whenever she said something like that, I would hug her, saying that even if it cost more, I wanted her to have the best. But now, I felt nothing anymore. Rachel gently hugged me from behind, whispering, "You've seemed tired lately. Don't push yourself too hard about buying a house. Take a bath early tonight and sleep, okay?" She said that and then went to the bathroom. Her phone buzzed. I glanced at it, a message from a familiar name, Derek. The message came with a photo. Him standing next to a brand new Mustang GT. "The car you gave me, I love it." I remembered that car. I had seen it at a luxury car exhibition where I worked as a security guard, worth no less than $200,000. I looked at my faded work uniform, my sunburned skin, my calloused hands. I was poor. Too poor. When I first met Rachel, she was a simple intern, somewhat shy. I loved her for that innocence. I didn't know it was a sophisticated mask hiding her true identity. The pampered daughter of one of the wealthiest real estate families in town. I was just a pawn. Rachel chose me because I was poor enough, ordinary enough, to provoke her ex-lover, Derek, to come back. They had been each other's first love, and now that he returned to town, Rachel started to change. Last week, while delivering food to a suburban resort, I caught sight of Rachel at a lavish party. She wore a designer dress surrounded by people. Someone asked, "Rachel, when are you going to break it off with that poor boyfriend of yours? He looks so pathetic." Another person sneered, "She only loved him to make Derek jealous. Now that Derek's back, why would she need that guy anymore?" I stood in a dark corner, silently witnessing it all. In their eyes, I was a lovesick fool. And the truth was exactly that. She had never loved me. That marriage certificate, which I once saw as the start of a family, was just a tool in her plan. That night, I wandered aimlessly in the rain. When I came to, I found myself in the hospital, sick with a cold and diagnosed with leukemia from prolonged overwork. I called Rachel. No one picked up. The next day, I saw her post a photo online, lounging on a beach, a man applying sunscreen to her back. After being discharged, I returned to the apartment. Rachel was sitting on the sofa, fresh out of the bathroom, her hair still wet, her eyes still carrying that familiar gentleness. She said nothing about the dozens of calls I'd made that went unanswered. She only said lightly, as if nothing happened, "I made chicken soup today. Have some, okay?" I didn't reply, just quietly walked into the bedroom. I was tired. Tired in both body and mind. That night, we slept as we had so many nights before. She hugged me while I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling. My heart no longer raced for her. A part of me had already died inside. The next morning, I cleaned up. I gathered everything related to Rachel, the gray scarf she once gave me, the hoodie she said she liked wearing because it smelled like me, the couple photos, the puppy-printed pajamas, and threw them all into a trash bag. "Why are you throwing all this stuff away?" Rachel stood behind me, her voice tinged with irritation. "For the future, I'll buy new ones," I replied coldly, then carried the trash bag out the door. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Sean, my best friend and the lawyer I'd asked to help with the divorce proceedings earlier. "I sent you the divorce papers already. Are you sure about this? You once said your greatest dream in life was to have a home and a child with Rachel. For years, you worked yourself to exhaustion for that dream." I gave a bitter smile. Yes, I once dreamed of that. But what I got in return was a lie, a scam. No need for divorce papers anymore. The marriage certificate was fake to begin with. It's over. I deleted the divorce file from my phone. No need for it anymore. A fake marriage didn't need a real document to end it. When I returned to the apartment, there was a guest. A man named Derek, Rachel's first love, was sitting on the sofa. His eyes were red, his voice choked. She left me." Rachel was kneeling beside him, wiping his tears, her eyes as gentle as if she were caring for a fragile child. I once believed they were just close friends. Rachel had said they were so close they could share the same pair of pants. I was naive enough to believe that. I even tried to befriend Derek, drank beer with him, laughed with him, all to put Rachel at ease. But seeing how she wiped his tears today, I finally understood how foolish I had been. Rachel turned to me and smiled. "This afternoon, let's go play games, okay? Derek's feeling down. I want to stay with him all day." I said nothing. No refusal, no agreement. I didn't want to argue anymore. At the town's gaming area, Rachel held Derek's hand, teaching him how to play a dancing game. She was usually hot-tempered, but today she was strangely gentle. Every time Derek scored, she cheered like a love-struck teenage girl. And me? I just stood on the sidelines, silently watching. I couldn't play active games anymore. The leukemia made me weak, easily tired, and the pain was starting to return. I slumped against the wall, breathing heavily. I pulled out my medication, emergency pills, but the bottle slipped and fell. The pills scattered across the floor. I grew dizzy, then passed out. Shouts rang out, but Rachel didn't leave Derek. She kept playing, kept laughing, kept clinging to that man. Late that evening, she took him to dine at a fancy Italian restaurant. That place was once called the most romantic date spot in Ashridge. It should have been packed, but today, it was reserved just for the two of them. Music played. A song Derek loved. Rachel had hired a singer just for the occasion. She wanted to create a perfect night for Derek. But all that effort went down the drain. Because Derek's girlfriend called right as dinner began, and he left immediately without hesitation. Rachel tried to hold him back, but it was futile. When Derek walked away, Rachel deflated like a punctured balloon. She slammed her fist on the table, furious. Then she quietly took out her phone, about to text Derek. But what she saw was a missed call. From me. Only then did she suddenly remember. I had fainted at the gaming area. Rachel called back immediately. On the other end was a nurse's voice. "Hello, this is Ashridge Hospital. Ethan Campbell was brought in for emergency care. Your number is in his emergency contact list." Half an hour later, Rachel appeared at the hospital. She burst into the room, her voice full of worry. "Are you okay? Why didn't you tell me?" I didn't look up, just said, I just fell a little. I looked at her, giving a faint smile. Seeing you so happy with Derek like that, I didn't want to bother you. Rachel quickly grabbed my hand, whispering, We're husband and wife. We're supposed to live together for a lifetime. I don't want there to be distance between us. I didn't reply. The words she said, which once moved me, now meant nothing. I stayed in the hospital for another week, and not once did Rachel come back. On the day I was discharged, the first person to call me wasn't her, but the owner of the diner where I used to work part-time. Ethan, can you help me out one last time? I know you quit, but the delivery guy didn't show up today. I couldn't refuse. He'd helped me when I was struggling, so I agreed. That day I worked until late at night. My body was drained, but I pushed through. This was the last order. The delivery spot was a villa in the eastern outskirts of town. I knocked on the door. Rachel opened it. She flinched slightly. Weren't you in the hospital? I just got discharged, I said calmly. And you? Attending another rich friend's birthday party? Rachel froze for a moment, then forced a smile. An old friend just got back from abroad. You wouldn't know them. I handed her the food bag, glancing inside the villa. The interior was lavish beyond belief. I'd never known Rachel knew anyone this wealthy. Then I smirked faintly. I've known her for years and never once heard her mention this person. Funny, isn't it? Rachel quickly changed her tone. Why are you working right after being discharged? Look at you, you're still injured. I looked at the scratches on my arm from the earlier fall, shrugged, and said nothing. 3 days later, Rachel didn't come home. She made excuses about staying at a friend's, but I knew. She was busy chasing Derek. I didn't ask. I didn't blame her. I just lived each day like a soulless shell. By day, I lay still in bed. By night, I silently stepped outside to smoke on the porch. I no longer had the energy to be angry, nor the desire to care. Everything seemed to be nearing its end. That night, I slept fitfully, then was jolted awake by frantic knocking. I opened the door. Rachel rushed in, throwing her arms around me. She reeked of alcohol. She cried, speaking as if in a delirium. Why do you treat me like this? I've waited for you. For so long. Why won't you turn back and look at me? If you just wanted, I could go with you anywhere. Become anyone you like. I stood motionless, letting her bury herself in my chest, her mouth still rambling through choked sobs. But I understood. She was mistaking me for Derek. She was hurting from rejection, from abandonment. I was just a stand-in once again. I gently lifted her up, placed her on the sofa, then went back to the bedroom and shut the door. The next morning, she woke up with a weary face, cracked lips, and messy hair. Cold wind blew through the living room window. She had sat there all night. Ethan! Her voice was full of frustration. What are you doing? I sat out here all night. I didn't reply. I just took my medicine in silence. Rachel saw the bottle in my hand and asked worriedly, Are you sick again? I hid the label and said calmly, It's fine, just painkillers. Rachel sighed in relief, but then her eyes landed on the neatly packed suitcase. Clothes, personal items, everything was carefully arranged inside. Where are you going? She panicked. I didn't answer directly. I just bent down to keep packing, muttering, These things aren't needed anymore. I'm going to throw them out. I left the room, leaving her in confusion. In the days that followed, Rachel suddenly grew quiet. She stopped going out. She just stayed home, often drinking alone, staring blankly out the window like a shadow. I didn't ask. I knew why. Derek had gotten back with his old girlfriend. Those two were now posting happy photos on social media every day. I knew she was in pain. But that didn't make me happy or satisfied. It was just a vague sadness. The last day before I left town, Derek called to invite me camping. At first, I wanted to refuse, but Rachel seemed oddly excited. In the end, I agreed. That day, Rachel drove me to Derek's place. But when she saw Derek step out with his girlfriend, her face immediately stiffened. Throughout the drive that followed, She couldn't take her eyes off the rearview mirror, where Derek's reflection sat in the car behind us. She gazed at him obsessively, so much so that she didn't notice a massive truck speeding toward us. Boom! The crash sounded violently. The car flipped, flames erupting from the hood. Derek's girlfriend opened the door and escaped in time. But Derek and I were trapped inside. We struggled, trying to unbuckle our seatbelts. Black smoke poured in, stinging our noses and throats. I coughed violently, my heart pounding chaotically. At that moment, Rachel rushed over, but her eyes, they only stopped on Derek. She used all her strength to pull Derek out, not glancing at me even once. As I lost consciousness, the last image I saw was Rachel helping Derek walk away from the fire, leaving me behind in the sea of flames. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. A nurse said, "A truck driver saved you. Lucky it wasn't too late." I didn't hear Rachel's name. Not a message, not a call. I quietly left the hospital room, intending to handle the discharge paperwork. But as I passed the next room, I heard a familiar voice. Through the crack in the door, I saw Rachel, wiping Derek's hands. Her eyes were full of tenderness. Her smile was as warm as spring sunlight. "I've seen her true face now," Derek whispered, his voice full of regret. "She never loved me. But Rachel, if you still have feelings, could we start over?" I stood outside, my heart silent as stone. Rachel didn't answer. Her face was blank, like a lifeless puppet. I didn't know if it was from shock or because there were no feelings left, but I didn't want to know more. I turned and walked away. Back at the apartment, I packed my things. The only items I didn't know what to do with were the cheap gifts Rachel had given me: a $10 watch, a $29 shirt, a nearly free game disc. Back then, I'd been touched when I received them. But now, I understood. To Rachel, I was only worth such cheap things. I wrapped them all up, along with a suicide note. I sent it to Rachel's villa. In the letter, I wrote, "I'm an orphan. The only family I ever had was you. You taught me how to love, how to hope. If there's one person I could leave my farewell to, it would only be you." I turned off my phone, took a taxi to the airport. "The last time I proposed to you, I didn't have a ring. I wanted to make up for it on your next birthday," I said, though I knew now everything had lost its meaning. At that moment, a girl stepped out from the villa, startled to see me. But she quickly regained her composure and pulled me inside. "Your boyfriend's here? Come join us." Before I could react, she dragged me in. I was swept into a noisy, unfamiliar party, surrounded by strangers, judgmental looks, and alien conversations. I quietly slipped away from the crowd, walking down the villa's hallway. I spotted a familiar shirt, the one I'd spent a sleepless week working to buy for Rachel from an official store. Now it was being used as padding for a dog bed. I froze. I clenched my fists. Downstairs, the laughter and chatter continued. Someone broke a $300 bottle of wine, but no one cared. I left the place. Rachel chased after me, helped me into the car, and drove to the basement garage. "Ethan," her voice choked, "don't ruin my friend's mood because of me." "But really, if I lost you, I couldn't bear it." I looked at her coldly. "We were never from the same world. Go back." Rachel pursed her lips, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "If you wanted, I could change." But right then, her phone rang. I recognized the voice on the other end instantly. It was Derek. "Rachel, she wants to break up with me." Hearing that, Rachel slammed on the brakes, opened the door, and yanked me out of the car like I was a sack of trash. "There's something at home. Call yourself a ride to the hospital," she said, not giving me a chance to respond. I stood in the cold street, wind whistling through my clothes. My lips paled from the chill. But my heart was even colder. I knew that voice was Derek's. Rachel had discarded me without hesitation. For that man. I went to the hospital myself, got my wounds treated, and for the first time in my life, I took a taxi home. Not because I was lazy or tired, but because I Didn't want to drag myself along like a loser anymore. Back home, Rachel wasn't there. But her computer was still logged into WeChat. A message popped up. "Are you sure you'll confess to Derek?" I stared at the screen. My heart was empty. So, given a single chance, she'd instantly cast everything aside, including me, to be with the one she truly loved. And I was just a substitute. It's fine. I'd already bought a plane ticket out of town. 3 days from now, I'd leave. Whether Rachel and Derek stayed together forever or not, it had nothing to do with me anymore. Ashridge Airport was small, with just a few gates. I sat in the waiting area, clutching a one-way ticket to Anchorage, the far north's end. No one knew me there. I'd go there, disappear as if I'd never existed. Before the plane took off, I sent Rachel a message. "Let's break up." Anyway, we were never really married. Seconds later, a flood of messages from her poured in, over a dozen long lines. I didn't read them. I turned off my phone, stuffed it in my pocket. As the plane left the runway, I looked out the window, watching Ashridge shrink smaller and smaller. I once dreamed of having a family there, with her, in a small white house with a wooden fence. But that dream was just an illusion. In Anchorage, I wandered the snow-covered streets, my mind completely blank. I no longer felt hunger, thirst, or cold. I only felt relief, like shedding an old, worn-out skin. That afternoon, as the sunset painted the city gold, I passed a narrow alley and heard arguing. A group of men was surrounding a young girl. Shouts, crude curses rang out. The girl struggled helplessly. Without thinking, I rushed in. "Let her go!" I yelled. A red-haired guy turned around, smirking. "Who the hell are you? Get lost if you don't want to die." I didn't back down. I shielded the girl, feeling my blood boil in my veins. The red-haired guy swung a fist. I dodged, but there were too many of them. They charged, pummeling me relentlessly. I fought back weakly, but it was no use. Pain coursed through my body, my vision blurred. As I was about to collapse, I only thought one thing. If I have to die, dying for something meaningful is fine. Just as I couldn't hold on any longer, a rush of footsteps echoed. A group of bodyguards in black suits appeared, led by Rachel. She ran to me, her eyes frantic. "Ethan! Ethan!" She knelt beside me, her voice trembling. "Don't fall asleep. You have to stay awake." I cracked my eyes open, seeing Rachel's face streaked with sweat and tears. I wasn't surprised. I just asked coldly, "Why are you here?" Rachel didn't answer. She turned to the men now kneeling on the ground, beaten by her guards. "You bastards have some guts, daring to touch him." Her voice rang like steel. She pulled out her phone, calmly calling the police. "I want to report an assault, intentional injury." The police and ambulance arrived. While waiting, Rachel still held my hand tightly, as if letting go would make me vanish. I didn't respond, didn't look at her. My emotions were a tangled mess. I was wheeled into surgery. As the doors closed, Rachel stood there, her eyes hollow, like she'd lost her soul. The operation lasted 3 hours. When I woke up, Rachel was sitting by my bed, her eyes red from crying. She fed me spoonfuls of porridge, her hands shaking, her mouth rambling about cheerful things, trying to make me smile. But I only looked at her like a stranger. Every day, Rachel came to the hospital. Each morning, she brought a vibrant bouquet, sometimes red roses, sometimes white daisies, sometimes pale lavender. She laid out food meticulously on the table, dishes I once loved, steamed fish, braised pork, soft cooked vegetables. She recounted stories, memories. But I didn't eat. I didn't touch the flowers. Behind her back, I threw it all in the trash. Did she think a few bouquets and meals could erase the pain she'd caused? Number. She'd once left me in the fire. She'd once used me as a tool to win back her ex. I couldn't forget. One day, she brought an album. Photos we'd taken together. At the beach, the park, in the rain. She flipped through each page gently, recalling each memory. "Ethan, do you remember? That day we stayed up all night waiting for the sunrise? When the sun rose, you hugged me and said, I'll love you forever. I stayed silent for a long time, then said coldly, don't bring it up anymore. She didn't give up. She kept caring for me, patient like a mother with a sick child. Every time I said, we're done, she only replied softly, I won't give up. Until one day, I returned to the hotel, opened the door, and froze. Rachel was sitting on the bed wearing a thin nightgown, her eyes burning. Ethan, she stepped toward me gently. I came to prove my heart. She untied her gown. The dress slipped off her shoulders, revealing her pale skin. I immediately grew furious. I pushed her away. What the hell are you doing? How many times have I told you? We're done. Rachel fell to the floor, tears streaming down. She cried like a child. Are you really that heartless? Have you forgotten all our memories? I gritted my teeth. To you, they're memories. To me, they're pain. Rachel tried to grab my hand, begging for a chance. I pulled away, walked to the door. I have a girlfriend now. She loves me truly, understands me. Not like you. Rachel went still. Who is she? Her voice trembled with jealousy. What do I lack compared to her? I didn't answer. I just opened the door. Get out. Don't ever come back. Rachel stood there, at the hotel threshold, her hair disheveled, her face streaked with tears. She said nothing more, just silently put her dress back on and walked out. But before the door closed, she turned back, her eyes brimming with pain. Ethan, if there's a next life, I hope we meet sooner. Back then, I'd love you truly. The door shut. I sat on the bed, feeling a vast emptiness inside, big enough to swallow everything. Not because I still loved her, but because I knew, even to the very end, I was the deepest cut in Rachel's heart, and she was the unhealed scar in mine. In the days that followed, Rachel still came to the hospital, silently like a ghost. She brought flowers, food, apologies soaked in tears. But I didn't respond. I'd decided to leave this world. I donated all my possessions to those who'd helped me. I wrote a long, painful suicide note and left it on the hotel room table. In it, I instructed the hotel manager to contact the morgue, saying I didn't want a funeral, didn't want anyone to cry. I scheduled a medically assisted death, legal in Alaska. 1 week later was my final day. On that day, I woke up early, put on my favorite outfit. I smoothed every crease, every strand of hair, as if preparing for a portrait shoot. Then I lay on the hospital bed, ready for the fatal injection. Right then, the door burst open. Rachel rushed in, hair wild, eyes red from crying all night. Ethan, no, you can't die. She collapsed beside the bed, hugging me, sobbing like an abandoned child. Please, give me one more chance. I can't live without you. I looked at her weakly. Rachel, it's all over. I know. I was wrong. I was blind. But now I understand. The one I love isn't Derek, never was Derek. It's you. It's you, Ethan. I sighed faintly, trying not to let tears fall. I believed she was telling the truth, but my heart had withered too long to revive with a few words of regret. I turned my face away. Forget me. Live well. Those were my last words to her, in a trembling voice, as if using the last of my life's strength. My body grew weaker, my consciousness hazy. I only felt Rachel's cold hand gripping mine, her sobs echoing like they came from a distant realm. Then I closed my eyes. Peace. The room's door shut silently. The doctor announced, the patient has passed away. Rachel collapsed on the floor, wailing like a lost soul. She buried her face in my cold hands, whispering like a madwoman. I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm sorry. The funeral was simple. Only Sean, my lawyer friend, a few old co-workers, and Rachel were there. She wore a black dress, her hair loose, standing before my tombstone, clutching a single white daisy. Ethan, I promise. I'll live well. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for this. And I'll love you until the last moment of my life. A few years later, Rachel became one of the top directors of a major charity fund in Oregon. She helped orphans, the homeless, those with terminal illnesses, people like the Ethan of years past. She never loved again. Each day, as the first light streamed through her window, she still whispered quietly, "Ethan, I miss you." On her desk was a small photo. A thin man, sad eyes, but a smile as gentle as the day's last light. True love sometimes isn't about being together. It's about existing forever in a heart, never fading.